The fifth intent, stay positive. I see good, say good, and do good. I accept the gifts from all my experiences. I am living in grace and gratitude. I stay positive. You know, I was staying in my little writer's cabin when I first got to Pagosa Springs, Colorado. This was about 3 years ago, and received a download one day. And the gist of the download was this: you get what you say you want, and you get what you say you don't want. And when you think about it a little bit, how often have you said, for instance, I don't want a flat tire, ka-bum, bum, 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 bum. You know? And there's a reason for that. The reason might be best exemplified by using the example of, I don't want war. Well, in order to even be saying I don't want war, you have to be envisioning war. That's a thought. Like any other thought, it'll work its way toward the surface of our experience. So, indeed, the best thing we can do is say, I intend that I am living in peace. And since we haven't mentioned anything about war, it can't have been created. Now, it's not much more complicated than that, really. That, you know, it has to do with our thoughts creating our world again. And always going back to that reference point. And they could have told us that back in first grade when they said, you know, run, spot, run, and see Dick and Jane. And oh, by the way, your thoughts create your world. But they didn't do that back then. And here I am at this point in my life right now, having to figure it out now. But that's okay, because the timing's good. I'd like to talk for a few minutes, too, on the subject of staying positive here. About the law of agreement. Everybody's talking nowadays about the law of attraction and the law of allowing, and there's a third one that's very important, also starts with A, the law of agreement. And the law of agreement, simply put, is that agreement breeds reality. Agreement reinforces realities. So if you can get one more person to agree with you about anything, it makes that belief system that much stronger. Two people get together and say, oh, it looks like rain. Well, then it's more apt to rain. And then 10 people get together and it looks like rain, and you get a whole tribe of people together saying it looks like rain, you can create rain. That's the way realities are born. All of the realities that we have in our world, that we've come into this lifetime, into this body, and we were told about all of the basic ways life works. Whether these things happen to serve us or not is beside the point, but every time we agree with whatever it is, then we add unto it. Even just one more person saying, okay, I think going and bombing those people is a good idea, then that reinforces that reality. What we're looking to do nowadays is to be a little more discerning of what it is we're agreeing with, because our agreement has power, and we're learning that it's a wise idea for us to begin to withhold our agreement from certain belief systems, especially those that do not serve us. In the early days of the Intenders, Tina and I used to talk about people having what we called their hip pocket dramas. Remember? Mm-hmm. And people, you'd run into folks and you'd be chatting with them for a moment or two, and all of a sudden they'd just sort of whip out their drama out of their hip pocket on you, and here all of a sudden you're embroiled and you're in the middle of this drama. We weren't sure how to handle that at first, actually. And indeed, on the Intender's Handbook, on the back, it says we share our dreams instead of our dramas. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, that's 90% of the time that's true. But there are instances where we actually have changed a little bit on that. We've grown a little bit on that one. And when we have a smaller Intender's circle, and there's only a few people, under a dozen people that night, and you've got time for everybody to have more full expression, sometimes when somebody's got a drama, we'll let them go into it for a few moments, just for 3 or 4 sentences, 5 sentences, something like that, just till you get the flavor of what's going on with their drama, long enough, indeed, to ask them to make an intention around that drama. And when they make an intention around that drama, we found that they come back to the circle a couple weeks later, no more drama. The way out of the dramas is to make an intention around them. And we've just seen that happen over and over and over again. Some folks tend to hold on to their dramas, and they'll pull their hip pocket drama out on you. And what we realized is that when we didn't want to reinforce their reality in terms of the drama, we wanted to be empathetic but not sympathetic. We intended that we were compassionate, but that we weren't taking on the energy of it all. In other words, sometimes when somebody lays a hip pocket drama on you, you walk away feeling dumped on or drained, and they walk away feeling good, but they're just going to go on to the next person and lay their hip pocket drama on them too, and over and over and over again. So we got good at doing this. Somebody would say they'd start in on their drama, and we got good at going, oh, or, We wouldn't even do this. We wouldn't, because there's an agreement, and the minute you have an agreement on it, whew, there's an exchange of energy. You walk away feeling drained. They walk away ready to do it again to the next person, and nothing really changed for them. You didn't set an example for them of staying uplifted, and that's the name of the game, is to stay uplifted and set that example for our fellow travelers. And not to say we're not compassionate. We are. We just want to do what works. So we realize that our agreement is a very powerful thing, and that there's a time to agree with people about the realities and the belief systems that work for us, and at the same time to withhold that agreement for the realities and belief systems that do not work for us. And I have a rule of thumb nowadays, and that rule of thumb is I'm just simply asking myself, is what I'm saying and is what I'm thinking serving me? And if it is, I'll stay with it, and serving my fellow travelers, serving my fellow men and women. And if it is not serving me or my fellow travelers, discard it and go on to the next thing. So agreement is a very interesting thing. So it works on an individual level when people have got their hip pocket dramas, and it also works on a collective level. There's so many things that we've been taught to or we tend to agree with people about. I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples off the top of my head here. The first one comes to mind. You're hearing more and more people nowadays talk about this thing called a ringing in the ears. It's much more prevalent with this speeding up, with this change of the paradigm and so forth, that as we move into the next dimension and as we evolve into our highest fulfillment, that it's common for, especially those who are the light workers nowadays, to hear this ringing in their ears, those who are evolving. And a lot of folks are going to the doctors nowadays because they've got a ringing in the ears, and the doctors are all too ready to prescribe drugs so that we stop that ringing in the ears going on. But the Christ talked about the ringing in the ears in the Essene Gospels of Peace. What the Christ had to say, what Jesus had to say about the ringing in the ears, he called it the sound current, and it is a path to God. And that all we have to do is put our attention on that ringing in our ears, and it'll take us into our higher selves. It is like a mandala or a focal point that we can use to evolve in our meditations, in our quiet time. It's a good thing. But of course, we've been taught that it's a bad thing, and let's go take some medicines and get rid of it. Here's another one. Restless leg syndrome. There's a strange one. Boy, it's just too much coffee. It's too much sugar. It's a dietary thing simply. Nothing more than that. Of course, they would have you think there's something really wrong with you. Not happening. Interesting. The things that we are being shoved down our throats, literally. Here's another doozy. Global warming. It's being shoved down our throats as if we just take it for granted that it's happening, that we are unempowered on the subject of global warming. I don't know about that. I mean, there was a wonderful book come out a couple years ago, Michael Crichton, my favorite American author, State of Fear. He said there's no statistical evidence to point one way or the other as to whether it's really happening. But one thing's for sure, there's big bucks in global warming. And we also easily lend our agreement to it. Oh yeah, global warming, But is that what we really want to be creating? Is it? No, it is not. Why aren't we intending that we have a beautiful, comfortable climate all the time for ourselves and trust that that is what we will be creating? We are not unempowered on the weather. And Aaron and I were in a workshop in Mesa, Arizona recently, and we had a lady sitting there. She was a Hopi elder. Her name was Bev. And Bev told us a story. She said when she was a little bit younger, she said that it hadn't rained in many years where she lived. She grew up in a place called Winslow, Arizona. And above Winslow are the three mesas. They call them First Mesa, Second Mesa, and Third Mesa. And that what they did was that they have a snake dance, that they call it, and that they do a snake dance one day, and then they follow that up with the antelope run, where the young brave who wins the antelope run gets to go up and pour a gourd of water onto the fields after they've done all this ceremony. And so she was there for the snake dance, but went down into the area of Winslow for the antelope run. So she was looking back up on the mountain when the young brave went to pour the gourd of water on the fields. And Bev described it like this. She said that there was a cloud that came over First Mesa that got dark over there, and there was a cloud that came over from Third Mesa over there, and they came from over Second Mesa, and she called it Niagara Falls. Rained harder than she'd ever seen. We turn on the Weather Channel at night, and we see what the weather people want us to think about how the weather's going to proceed. And they've got all these people working for the radio station and the TV stations and so forth who are good at the Photoshop and the graphics and so forth, and they show us pictures of how the weather's going to be. And if we agree with them about that, we add to it. One more person agreeing with any reality makes it that much stronger. And again, I think the weather that we're intending to create is one that's comfortable for all of us, and to hold that vision for ourselves, regardless of what anybody else tells us is what's going on with the weather. And that then indeed is what we will create. Now, there are three subjects that come to mind when we're talking about staying positive that I'd like to talk about for a few moments. And these subjects are the subjects of defense and money and health. Three subjects that most people are thinking about at one time or another. Defense, or safety, or security. We, whoever we is, we agree upon who we is, has a Department of Defense. But would we even have a Department of Defense if we weren't envisioning ourselves being attacked? Or envisioning ourselves being vulnerable? That's a thought. Like any other thought, it'll work its way up to the surface of our experience. So what I'm suggesting to you is that a defensive posture always invites an attack. Always. Wouldn't it be better if we just intend that we are guided, guarded, and protected in each and every moment of our lives? Safe. I intend that I am safe and happy and healthy my whole life. And know that because that is what we are intentioning, and that is what we are agreeing upon, then that is what we are creating. Makes sense. Sure beats having to have that defense mindset that isn't working for us anymore, hasn't worked in a long time, and it isn't what we're looking to create for ourselves. Not in the least. Because we intend peace. And we intend a healthy, happy environment for all those who walk this planet. And the days of that paradigm are going away because the human spirit is crying out for freedom, and it will not be denied. The second subject, money. Everybody thinks about money all the time. It's like we're obsessed on the subject of our money. And it's an interesting subject, actually. And in the early days of the intenders, we had people intending to win the lottery. Heard it a lot. Never seen anybody win the lottery yet in the intenders, but they're still intending it, and we're still aligning with them on it. So we asked our guidance what's going on with money, because there is so much of a poverty mindset, especially in Hawaii where we first started the Intenders. And we checked in with Lee Ching about that. And what we were told was quite interesting. We were told to look at money as a flow, like the kitchen faucet. With the kitchen faucet, the water comes in, the water goes out. The water can't come in unless it's going out. It can't go out unless it's coming in. You have to have that flow going. But that by the act of hoarding or saving for a rainy day, we shut off the flow, because we're envisioning in our mind a picture in our mind of us having run out or being destitute. That's a thought. Again, like any other thought, that's what we'll be creating. So what we were told is to spend ourselves into our abundance. A little spooky at first, but I've been doing it and it works. It works. And how many times have you gone to that counter at the store there and looked at an item on the shelf and little voices come inside your head, said, "That's too expensive." Oh, the word expensive, by the way, it comes from the Latin. Ex means without, and pensive means thinking. So we've abdicated our thinking powers whenever we use that word. So nowadays, if I'm seeing that item on the counter and that little voice comes in and says, "That's too expensive," I buy it. If I need it, I buy it. I'm not talking about spending frivolously or irresponsibly, but spending responsibly. If you need it, get it. And you'll see that the universe will rally to your side, and that things can begin to come to you from both expected and unexpected sources. You see, because we've been taught that money can only come to us via certain channels. You have to go out and get that job, do the things that the boss says to do, and get that paycheck every 2 weeks, and then you have so much to do. No, that isn't the way the universe works at all. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There isn't. But there are easier ways of doing it, because once we get good at using the law of manifestation, law of attraction, why, we'll just create whatever it is we're looking for. We'll just skip those, all those financial concerns and stresses and worries, and go straight to manifesting the item that we need. Just because we hold our attention on it, just because we intend it. Just because we intend it. The third subject is health. And very interesting subject. And again, in the early days of the Intenders, we would be intending for somebody in our circle to get better. We'd have prayer circles, and we weren't getting the results we were looking for in the early days, because we were naming their diseases. And part of our Intenders, in the Little Intenders Handbook, it says that we refrain from the naming of sicknesses and diseases, that we refrain from agreeing with the words that people use to describe whatever it is that's going on physically in their lives. We would say, Aunt Sophie's got fumbuckaruckus. And sure enough, we would intend that Aunt Sophie's fumbuckaruckus gets better. And we'd all make that intention, but Aunt Sophie's fumbuckaruckus just wasn't getting better for us, and we couldn't figure out why. So we checked in with our guidance on that, and we were told that when we were seeing Aunt Sophie as being sick or having such and such a disease, and if we named the disease, we were actually agreeing with her and reinforcing the sickness instead of the wellness. So what we started doing, and what we were told to do in our guidance, is to see Aunt Sophie in her highest light. Happy, healthy, whole, and humming. Humming. Humming's a higher frequency. Doing a dance around the room. See Aunt Sophie enjoying her life to the fullest. And that's when we started getting results. And I assure you that any healer who has ever really healed people, from Jesus Christ on down, they have seen the person already well and held that vision until it matched them in 3D. In other words, it is our job to hold the light for others while they are still unable to hold it for themselves. It's interesting that we go to a doctor to get validation for our sicknesses. That's weird right off the bat. Sort of strange. And you go to a doctor, and the doctor will think about, tell him what your symptoms are. I've got this and this and this bothering me. And then the doctor will run through his mind from all the things he learned in school and all the things that the pharmaceutical salesman has told him about all the symptoms that you could possibly have. And he'll do his best to match those symptoms that he's got in his mind with the symptoms that and then he'll rattle off the name of a sickness. And if you believe him, you have to begin to live it out. Interesting. The Rosicrucians, some 60 years ago, were doing hypnotic experiments on people, and they would take a subject and hypnotize them, and they would tell them that they would take a stick or a quill or whatever and tell them it was a red-hot poker or a branding iron. And they would then touch it to the hypnotized person's skin, and immediately the person would yell out in pain, and a welt and a blister would begin to form immediately. Done it 1,000 times, always works if the person's hypnotized. Interesting, huh? That the body will create what the mind tells it to immediately. We are amazing creatures. We're amazing creators. There's a phenomenon that I call lumping, and lumping is where we sort of lump ourselves in with everybody else who has whatever particular disease we think we may have. When we lump ourselves in with other people, we do ourselves a tremendous disservice, because what we have is what we have. And just because other people have had similar symptoms doesn't mean that that is exactly what we have. We just have what we have, and no need to give it a name, no need to join that group of people who just because the doctor may say that you have such and such. The truth of the matter is that we are each unique beings, and whatever experiences brought us to whatever physical imbalance we're experiencing at any different time, whatever we had different genetics, different parents, different schooling, different cereal for breakfast. If we lump ourselves in with everybody else instead of remembering our uniqueness, then indeed we have to live it out. We have to take part in that group of people. So it's best that we just realize, of course, that we just have what we have. And so if the doctor runs past all those symptoms and he tells you that you have such and such a disease, and if you even go, you get it. You've got to deal with it. But if you can just go, oh, or and withhold your agreement, then everything in your life from that minute forward changes. And you have now to deal with whatever challenges or health issues you're dealing with. You can deal with it in an alternative way. We were told in our guidance from day one that prayer and fasting heals just about everything in a few short days. Prayer and fasting, amazing healings, powers in prayer and fasting, in intending and fasting. Cleaning up the body. The body has the innate ability to clean up just about anything if you let it. So, it's time that we take our own power back. And we do that by withholding our agreement to those belief systems that are no longer working for us. And again, the minute that we do buy into the consensus reality, the matrix's belief systems, you got to deal with it. Those days, fortunately, are changing. And all of this is coming to light now, because the human spirit, again, will not be denied. I spent 3 winters ago, I had some friends very good friends who lived in San Diego, who decided to move to the desert below Tucson, out into the middle of the desert, and get away from the city. And the reason they moved to this particular piece of property was because it had a cave on it. And my buddy, who I moved there with, because I had put property together a few times and they really hadn't done anything like this, and they asked me to join them. And so I moved with them down to the out in the middle of the boonies, out in it was the old Warner Brothers lands where they used to make John Wayne movies. And beautiful country right between two arroyos there, the property was, and it had a cave on it. And my buddy, who was sort of a conspiracy nut, his name was Ben, and Ben, he would listen to the Art Bell show every night. And we'd be working together on the around the property, cutting the mesquite trees or painting the horse corrals or stocking this cave, because he had this cave stocked with enough stuff to feed half the town of Aravaca nearby. And he was ready for anything. He was totally into the doomsday scenarios. And he would tape, he had an elaborate dubbing system, and he would tape the Art Bell show every night. And he'd come to work the next day while we're painting the corrals or chopping the trees, and he'd say, "Tony, you got to listen to this tape." He said, "The comet is coming. You cannot avoid the comet. Comet's on the way." And I'd go listen to the tape, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting stuff." And then the next day I go to work, and if it wasn't the comet, you know, it was Armageddon. If it wasn't Armageddon, it was the plague. If it wasn't the plague, it was the war. If it wasn't that, it was something else. And every day I'm listening to this, I'm going home and listening to these tapes, and every day my energy level's going down and down and down. And all of a sudden, finally one day, I find myself getting sick. And I'm laying in bed, couldn't even go out to paint the horse corrals or to help him on the land or do whatever we were doing, do the gardens. And laying in bed, and I check in with my guidance, and my guidance told me this. Said, "The next time that Ben comes to you with his doomsday scenarios, tell him you have a job. That it's your job to stay uplifted no matter what. No matter what." And so 2 or 3 days later, I went back to work again, and as I'm going to work, here comes Ben with the 3 tapes I missed from the 3 days I was off of work. He was going to load me up good. And I said, "Oh, wait a minute, buddy, I got to ask you a favor." I said, I've realized that, especially in my line of work, I have to stay uplifted. So I'm going to ask you to respect that and just hold off on those tapes. And he did. He held off on them. And my energy level started coming right back up, got healthy again. And so I suggest that to you, that if you were to have a hypothetical resume for a job that you were going to be applying for, that one of the things you'd put on that resume is that it's your job to stay uplifted, no matter what. Regardless of all the mundane dramas that are constantly being perpetuated upon this planet. Because if we all go down and wallow in the swamplands of the negativity, then we're all down there wallowing around in the negativity. Somebody's got to stay up. That's us. That's us. And stay up and set an example for all those who are dealing with those kind of issues. So that's our job as the light workers of our time and as the people who truly desire to make a difference and help their fellow men and women. Simple as that. Stay uplifted no matter what. Good job, huh?